Hello students. Now I will discuss a very famous poem by Rabindranath Tagore, Gitanjali number 35. Actually the poem has no dedicated name, but in the book Gitanjali, for which Rabindranath won Nobel Prize in 1913, the poem number is 35. In original Bengali book Noibidya, we find 157 poems, but in the translation of English, for which Rabindranath won the Nobel Prize, there where we find only 103 poems. Rabindranath was born in 8th and 9th May, because there is a confusion for the Bengali and English date, and died on 7 or 8th August 1941. He was a polymath. He was called polymath because he was a poet, playwright, short story writer, novelist, songwriter, and lots of many things he had created throughout his life of 80 years. He is also called Vishwaguru, Vishwakobi. This poem was first published, Where the Mind is Without Fear is the first line of the poem, and the poem is known by sonnet number 35, or Where the Mind is Without Fear. This poem was first written in 1900 and published in 1901 in Tagore's poets collection titled Noibidya. And it was translated in 1912 by Rabindranath Tagore himself. And the poem is written in verse form. It is written in verse form, and now I will discuss or narrate the poem in Bengali version. Where the mind is without fear, chitto jetha bhoy shunno, and the head is held high, uchcho jetha shir. A place where people live with dignity and are not suppressed by fear. Gyan jetha mukto, where knowledge is free. Where knowledge is free. Jetha griher education, where the knowledge is free, education and information should be accessible to all the restricted and won't be restricted. Where the world has not broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. যেখানে গৃহের প্রাচীর, বাড়ির প্রাচীর আপন আপন প্রাঙ্গণ তলে দিবস সর্বরি বসুধারে রাখে নাই খণ্ড ক্ষুদ্র করি. Where the world has not been broken up into the fragments by narrow domestic walls. তারপর লাইনটা বলছে, where prejudice, caste, religions don't divide humanity into small groups. তারপর বলছে যেথা বাক্য হৃদয় উচ্চ মুখ হতে উচ্ছ্বাসিত ওঠে, where words come out from the depth of the truth, where people are honest and speaks from their hearts and not out of deceit. তারপরের লাইনে কি বলছে? তারপরের লাইনে বলছে যেথা নির্ধারিত স্রোতে দেশে দেশে দিশে দিশে কর্মধারা ধায় অজস্র সহস্রবিধ চরিতার্থতায়, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards the perfection. আমি এই নৈবেদ্যতে যে বাংলায় যে কবিতাটি লেখা হয়েছিল তার বাংলা লাইনগুলো প্রথমে বলছি, তারপরে ইংলিশটা বলছি. where tireless striving stretches its arm towards the perfection, where people works hard constantly to achieve excellence in their field. তারপরের লাইনে কি বলছে? যেটা তুচ্ছ আচারে মরু বালু রাশি, বিচারে স্রোত পথ ফেলি নাহি গ্রাসী, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary deserts of dead habits. অদ্ভুত, কি সুন্দর রচনা তার. where logic and reason are choked by old useless superstitions and habits. এই লাইনটার যদি সহজ ইংলিশে বলি, তারপরে বলছেন নিত্য যেথা তুমি সর্বকর্ম চিন্তা আনন্দে নেতা, where the mind is led forward by thee মানে you into the ever-winding thoughts and action. Where God's, এটা সহজ ইংলিশে বললে দাঁড়ায়, where God or higher conscience guides human thoughts and deeds towards progress. তারপরে বলছেন, পিত ভারতের সেই স্বর্গে কর জাগরিত, into the heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. It is a final prayer to wake up the nation into its ideal state of freedom. And though there is no dedicated title, but we should discuss about the title. The title, we should consider the first line, where the mind is without fear, as a title. And it is it perfectly summarizes Rabindranath Tagore's view of free, self-reliant and progressive nation. It serves as the both ultimate goal of the poem and the fundamental condition required for the true freedom. The title represents a psychological state of absolute freedom, where citizens live without dread, oppression and subjugations. Because this poem was written in the British period, and this poem directly challenges the forced fear and submissiveness imposed by the colonial master, means the British. It also gives a pen picture of the freedom, not just as a political independence, but as an awakening of human spirit. মানুষের মানবতার উত্থানের কথা বলেছেন, তার সমৃদ্ধির কথা বলেছেন। The poem begins with an exact word of the title, immediately setting the tone of the theme. Every subsequent line lists the necessary need to achieve this fearless state of mind, such as knowledge, truth, rationality. Actually, these three are the pillars to achieve truth, to achieve freedom, to achieve a conscience that can fight with anything odds. It emphasizes the external freedom in meaningless without internal. It emphasizes that external freedom is meaningless without internal intellectual freedom. A mind without fear is only a tool capable of breaking down the narrow domestic walls like caste, creed and prejudice. Actually, Rabindranath Tagore was against all type of prejudice, all types of subjugation, all types of submissiveness. Along with this, the theme of the poem, where the mind is without fear, is of total freedom, encompassing political, intellectual, moral and spiritual liberation. Rabindranath Tagore envisions freedom not just as independence from foreign rule, but as an awakening of nation's soul, the awakening of the individual souls and collectively nation's soul. It is written during the British period. It demands nation's freedom from foreign oppression. It is true. It envisions a country where citizens can hold their head high and high with dignity. They can live with dignity. The poem seeks a society where freedom belongs to every individual and collectively to this nation. The poem emphasizes that education must be free, accessible and unrestricted by wealth or status. Everyone should have the right of education, which is very much necessary, very much relevant in present days. It rejects blind superstitions, urging people to let logical reasoning guide their actions, to guide their thinking. It opposes the stagnant habit of mind and prevents societal growth. Actually, prejudices, all type of prejudices and superstitions draw us back. It strongly condemns the fragmentation of society by the narrow domestic walls like caste, creed, religion and race. All these are the great barriers of human society, are the barriers for freedom, barriers for development, barriers for growth, barriers for enhancements of soul. The theme promotes a unified world where humanity is not divided by artificial prejudice. That is why he is called Vishwakobi. The poem says of truthfulness. The poem sings of truthfulness. The poem says of perfection. The poem says of divine guidance. If we come to the tone of the poem shifts dramatically from reflective and critical to deeply hopeful and prayerful introspection. Rabindranath Tagore balances his dissatisfaction with the present state of society, with powerful, optimistic vision for the future. This is a visionary poem. This is an optimistic poem. It is a divine appeal to God. It is a divine appeal. It is a divine appeal to God, addressing him as Father. The tone carries a scared, solemn quality as the poet begs for spiritual awakening, and he very solemnly, as a great devotee, he prays to the Father. The tone is deeply nationalistic, filled with intense love for his country. The tone becomes sharp when condemning superstitions, describes a dreary desert. There is a strong sense of urgency to break down narrow domestic walls and social evils, because all these, he says through this poem, are very harmful for any developing society, any developing country. The poem ends on a soaring note of optimism, believing the nation can reach the heaven of freedom. Heaven of freedom means an ideal state of freedom. Many people criticizes of this ideal state of freedom does not exist, but our poem, our Tagore, our Rabindranath dreams of this state of freedom. The language inspires strength, urging the citizens to strive tirelessly, fights for perfection. And for all this, Rabindranath Tagore takes shelter or take resort of some literary devices. He uses metaphors like clear streams of reason, compares logical thinking to a clean, continuous flowing river. Dreary desert, sand of dead habits, compares the old blind superstitions and prejudices and the useless customs to draw us back, because all these are the barriers against the freedom and growth. He also uses personifications. Tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where words come out. All these are use of beautiful personifications. There are also alliterations, where the mind, use of W, where words, repetition of again W, dreary deserts and dead habits, repetition of D. All these alliterations are beautifully placed in this poem. And he also used anaphora, where the deliberate repetition of the word where at the beginning of the almost every line creates a rhythmic, cumulative effect and builds a tension towards the final prayer. Where is a note that makes us aware, makes us think objectively. And there is also synecdoche, where mind and head, the mind without fear and the head held high, represents the whole person and on a large scale the citizen of the entire nation collectively. And we also find apostrophe. Thee means you and my father, a direct address to an absent or divine entity, God, during the poem into the personal and solemn prayer. These are not the character in this poem. These are not described in the poem, but they are addressed. There is a beautiful use of apostrophe. And if we see, this is an 11-line patriotic prayer. This is An 11-line patriotic prayer structured as a simple complex sentence and view. It outlines the poet's blueprint he outlines the poet's idea, he outlines the poet's faith for a truly free nation. And the message is obviously of true nation, true independence and true nation. It is not just a political freedom, but an intellectual and spiritual awakening which will drive and take forward a nation and the people in it into a ideal state of humankind. This is really a poignant poem, a beautiful poem. It gives us an philosophy of life, philosophy of freedom, philosophy of an ideal state of life. Tagore's vision of heaven of freedom is just relevant today. In 2026, Tagore's view of freedom is 100% relevant today, though it was a poem of century ago. It reminds us the true freedom that starts right inside our own mind and that collectively drive the nation to reach an ideal condition of freedom. This is all for the poem. And now, thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend. I shall see you in the next video. Stay inspired.